Well, it's the one time of the year when our elected leaders, presidents, prime ministers come together, and now our membership is 18, and discuss the issues that are of regional importance. They're running their own countries, they're facing issues that are important to them nationally, but when we come from islands that are across the Pacific Ocean, there are regional issues that are really important to us, and it's the only time that they come and totally dedicate themselves to that time together to have a conversation. And that's where decisions are made, political settlements are reached, and an understanding of one another. They do meet in different fora, as we now see ourselves, taking very much a part with PG leading in the COP discussions, but also when we go to the UNGA in New York, when we go to Japan for Palm 8, and in other situations where the leaders get together. But this is something, this meeting happens in the Pacific. Oh, I think it's had a tremendous influence. It's about how we see ourselves. I think we've always seen ourselves as members of the Pacific Island Forum, but this is about being a part of a great ocean, large ocean states because of our economic zones, and how we then come together as an ocean continent. So it's a narrative about identity, it's a narrative about purpose, it's of course a narrative about people and the ocean, the resources of that ocean, and most particularly it's about our stewardship of that ocean and what we do to take care of it, how we manage it, how we protect it, and how we utilize it, of course, for our people. Now, in some of the bigger islands in the Pacific, you have populations that live in high country, but most people are aware of the concept of this ocean around us, and it's building on that together and collectively we can gain much more. We can look at this as an opportunity, but it's going to take an effort where we start thinking collectively on issues that are really important to us as a group. So in the Secretariat, we have now used that as a fundamental narrative in our work. The framework for Pacific regionalism, which was the decision of 2014 by the leaders, this is really the construct of how you operationalize aspirations of the region. But the narrative is bigger than that. It's what we want our children, our grandchildren to understand, that they belong to this amazing ocean continent that covers half the world's surface. So I think that's really important. Well, there was a very important decision made in terms of security. And this was around after the drawdown in the Solomon Islands. The Secretariat was asked to do the work on what we call Bikatawa Plus. So what does that mean in terms of a security declaration? So basing the discussion on we are a regional entity, we are part of the Blue Pacific, we consulted very widely across the Pacific, more widely than we've ever done before. And we then came up with draft documentation. We held workshops at the Secretariat to try and glean more information from our own member states. And that consultation and the richness of those dialogues in our member states' countries was so very important, because it informed the work that we've done in terms of the declaration that we've now taken through to the foreign ministers, from the forum officials meetings to the foreign ministers, and now it'll go to the leaders. And we've turned that around in one year, which I'm very, very pleased about. But the importance of it is that what did we hear? And that was that security in the region is not just about a military security. It is about human security. It is about environmental security, particularly with regard to climate impact. It is about the security of the food security in our communities. It's also about, I think, the relationship we have with partners, etc. But it's looking at security through the lens of how the people in the Pacific think about it and want to articulate it, and we've been able to capture that. There will be more work that needs to be done once the leaders, if they approve the declaration, because then you've got to have the instruments that have to be designed for implementation and how all this will work. Well, I think one of the issues that has always been of concern to me as Secretary General is that we've got to start taking responsibility for ourselves. And the theme that's coming out of Nauru really talks about that. And I think this gives us a great opportunity to really focus on the work that we've already started. And one of those issues is called the Pacific Resilience Facility. And that is under the authority of the Economic and Finance Ministers at the moment. The leaders it'll be in the leaders' brief in Nauru. But this is about looking at what do we do to prepare ourselves for the for the climatic impact and the cyclones and weather impacts that we know are going to happen to us. Rather than waiting for a disaster to happen and then saying, well, thank you to the international community, which do help us with open hearts, and we are grateful for that. But rather than wait for a disaster is to say, what do we do to prepare ourselves for that? What do we do in terms of refitting our infrastructure? And how do we then utilize resources that we ourselves can raise and manage within the region? And how can that be accessible to governments, to the private sector, and to our communities who are we're all affected by this? And I think taking more responsibility for ourselves is a very strong message to send to the international community that we are not victims. Our member states, our peoples have been stewards of a great ocean for generations and generations, and we're not just going to leave some of our most vulnerable islands because we know that there's going to be impact because of climate change. We have to help them to be prepared, help them to be able to not lose any lives, and also to be able to be resilient and sustain themselves during times of intense impact.